A young woman has some real challenges growing up today, particularly when she lives in a tough environment. That's our topic next on Lakeshore Focus. Running a business requires smart decisions every day. Make a good decision for your company today and reach other businesses by sponsoring Lakeshore Focus. People who watch our show are an active part of the community. They care about their neighborhoods, schools, and their homes. Are these viewers your customers? Well, they should be. To learn about all the benefits of sponsoring Lakeshore Focus, give us a call at 219-756-5656. And instead of seeing my face, you can see your business. Welcome again to Lakeshore Focus, a weekly show highlighting the key issues, important events, and interesting people in our region. I'm Keith Kirkpatrick. When you hear the term Boys to Men, you probably think of the singing group that produced some sweet sounds. Cool name and a solid concept, boys growing into men. How about Girls to Women? Why doesn't that resonate in some way? Girls grow into women. Maybe society sends a different message to girls. On our show today, we have two women who are working with girls or young ladies. What are they facing and how do we help them become strong, empowered women? Let me introduce Kelly Fair, who is the founder and executive director for Polished Pebbles Girls Mentoring Program, and Cherise White, founder and chair of the ECIER Foundation. So, glad to have you both on here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
So I had to get through that EC...
ASEER.
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 Is that how you pronounce it?
That's how you pronounce it.
Okay,
ASEER.
so I just kind of spelled it out for people, so they'll maybe remember it that way. So I figured you guys would be on here for two reasons. Your expertise, both you work with young ladies and trying to help them. And at one point you were young ladies, right?
Right.
So you went through some of this stuff. We're not going to ask how long ago that was, okay?
Okay.
So we're going to just let everybody can guess. So just maybe give me a reference point or give our viewers a reference point as to what you're doing working with these young women. Cherise?
Okay. Well, our foundation, we work with young women and young men in high school and teaching them, empowering them how to be innovators and entrepreneurs. And not, of course, encouraging them to go off to school, but when they go off to school, after college, they're looking for a job. So some of these students nowadays are so innovative and we work with them on their projects and helping them with a product or a service. And that's what we do.
Okay. And you work in a little different way with girls, right?
Sure. So with Polished Pebbles, we focused on girls being great communicators at home, school, and the future workplace, hoping that will help to ensure their employability in the future workplace. So when we say we want girls to be great communicators, we work with about 400 to 500 girls a school year in Chicago and some here in Northwest Indiana. It means that they know how to introduce themselves to someone new for the first time. Seems really simple, but shining is an acronym. Smiling is the S, H for hello, I for introduce, and giving 3 facts, N for nodding your head, and E for ending a conversation.
You guys, you got all these little clever things. Do these work with the kids?
But you know what? Yeah, and the kids say things like, oh, that's the formula for a really great presentation. So if it's the formulas, it's the catchy things, we all do, young or old, that help us remember some of those most critical learning points.
Well, let's go back to, let's start at the starting point with this. I wanted people to have a reference as to what you were doing, but what's it like today for a young woman growing up in our society? I mean, what are the challenges they face? Just, they're probably like this many, right? But I mean, give our viewers kind of a feel for what it's like growing up as a girl today.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Either one.
Oh, no, I think it's some of the things that, we talk about what was it like when we were young or just different generations. I think some of those things are still the same. It's still the foundation. Adolescence, it's just a time, true thing. Your parents, your mom, they're going to get on your nerves sometimes, or you woke up on the wrong side of the bed and you're in a funk. For us with Polished Pebbles, we call it the other side of the crisis. Is recognizing many of our girls make it to school with a bad attitude because of those basic things that every kid goes through. But we know that they're facing high levels of trauma in their homes and in their communities before they even hit the school doors. They're growing up in the same homes and the communities that many of our boys are, and that we become a lot more aware of and conscious of the challenges for growing up in trauma communities or violence for boys, but we're not thinking about what it looks like for girls and what that impact is. So that walk from home to school, she may have seen and experienced things that no kid should have, no adult should have. That means that she got to school and she pushed or she went off on the girl sitting next to her or had a bad or nasty attitude with the principal or a teacher. But my gosh, if you only understood the things that she may have seen or experienced in her home. So we kind of seek to help her provide that voice to be able to express, hey, I'm experiencing this, I'm experiencing that, but also just kind of educate the larger community to look beyond and peel the layers back and look beyond the loudness or the attitude or the seeming despair and understand what she may really be experiencing.
Okay, there was a lot to dissect there, so I'm going to try to dissect a little bit.
Sure.
So we've got these two pieces you're saying. One is just girls grow up with the normal challenges of kids growing up.
Right.
And some of those same things for boys and so forth. That's just kind of normal growing up kind of stuff. But some kids really face some difficult traumas in their life, and there's things going on. And that's just not urban setting. That's today it seems to be every place.
Right.
Challenged environments are challenged environments. What are some of those other kind of normal things, Sharice, do you think that particularly girls are facing?
Peer pressure. One, at school, the dress, what,
Do you
how
think
they
it's higher
dress.
than boys, peer pressure?
Yes, yes. Because you know what, girls want to be liked. They want to be loved. Some have issues at home with not being treated well, not being able to do some of the things that they like to do. So a lot of that is the peer pressure, not being able to do as their friends or being able to go certain places and their environment in which they live. So it forms some challenges. And then sometimes they run into being with issues with gangs. And as you say, getting in and out of their environment in their neighborhood, sometimes, depending on where they live, that can be very challenging. And that's, as when we were growing up, we didn't have to face that as much, whereas now it's, prevalent. One, trying to get to school and learn, and then one, getting to school, then are you going to be able to get home and not be killed? Facing all with the gun violence, that's just a lot that they have to go through.
Are most of the kids you're working with living in urban settings? I mean, that's kind of where you guys are focused right now, right?
The majority, but I mean, even some in some of the suburban settings as well, they're facing some of the same things. Even if it's things not at home or at school, the media. I mean, and when you're looking at girls and you think about the peer pressure and the self-esteem, a lot of it is tied into the imagery and the media and the pressure to look a certain way or dress a certain way or have a certain body image. Those are some of the things that they're dealing with as well. So, and that the media is hitting girls all over, urban, rural, suburban, all types of places. So they're contending with a lot. And then the other thing that girls face at a higher level than boys as well is sexual abuse. And so when you look at, for some of the girls that we serve, sex trafficking numbers, and sex trafficking is not something that when we watch, primetime TV law shows that make us feel like it's something that only happens with immigrants, young European women. But the reality is the largest group of sex trafficked women in the United States are women of color as well. So it's just all these different layers of things that they're dealing with that when a girl presents herself, you have no idea, the barrage of imagery and experiences that help produce this child that may be having challenges in school.
So this pressure word keeps coming up, and it sounds like, there's forces coming every direction that are really bombarding these young ladies. And so that probably explains why we see that little attitude. So how does that kind of translate? You both talked about how, so what we see sometimes is this sassy, smart-mouthed, irreverent young woman. So you think that's directly coming from that rebellion and why, or from that reaction to that pressure? Where's that coming from?
That's also, again, within their environment, the people that they're around, and also drugs. Some turn to drugs, to help ease the pain and, turn to little boys for love, and because they don't receive that at home. So what they don't receive at home, they look for it in the streets. So trying to organizations like what she has and what I have and others being able to reach out to these young ladies and say, you know what, we can help you make a difference. Some of them just need some TLC and they don't receive that. And you go that extra mile to be able to help them in a way that they don't receive at home. And we always say it starts at home. But if you don't receive that at home, then you're looking for it in the streets. And if you have someone that could properly and help mentor them in the right direction, you can help be able to save them.
So this pressure comes back to the self-esteem piece, and I think that's a strong part of what both of you try to do is the self-esteem, confidence, being a strong person. So why is that really the foundation of what you're trying to do?
I mean, I think it's a core part of it. The confidence and the self-esteem and how you feel about yourself is always going to be the foundation. I think for some of the challenges that we see there's additional need for skills and skill development. There's an additional need for career pathways and different things like that. So, when we think about our girls and why they show up, they're fending people off. I mean, could you imagine? You're not only physically fending people off, you're physically fending off the ideas and the images that say everything that doesn't look, seem, and talk like you is better than you. That's a lot to deal with, but I think for us it's the skill sets of, yes, having a confidence, but having really great communication skills that provide a pathway for you to, one, deal with your trauma, communicate, find your voice, connect with others, two, the communication skills that become the currency to take you into different communities and different opportunities, whether that be a career path of working as an employee somewhere else, whether that be becoming an entrepreneur. Learning how some of these basic skills will help transform you and take you out of where you are, but also provide you with the tools and the currency to go even further. So I think it's a need for talk about confidence and self-esteem, but you got to come with giving them ready tools and skills to really be able to cause and impact change.
That's a great differentiation, because you're right. If you help somebody's confidence go up and their self-esteem, they feel better about themselves, it's not going to really last very long if they can't find a job and they can't find a productive way to be part of society. And you're real focused on that with your program, right? I mean, that career pathing thing.
Right, and when she talked about basic needs, what's basic to us, sometimes it's not basic to them. Being able to teach them proper etiquette, what spoon to use, what fork to use, not always going out to fast food restaurants. Take a group of them to a very nice restaurant and prior teaching them which glass to use. All that what you feel is basic. To them, they don't understand, and if no one has ever taken the time to teach and train them that, then they wouldn't know. But it's very important as they're growing, to be able to know those things. So for us, what is important is providing exposure. Again, which is very small with us. You're taking students from, let's say, Gary, Indiana. There are some kids who have never even been to Chicago. Taking them over and exposing them to the restaurants and to the museums or to a play, to a theater. So, training them now so when they're older, they, would appreciate that, because sometimes that's not what they receive in school.
I think when people hear that, they find that a little hard to understand. So, I mean, you've got kids who've never been to a restaurant, have never been, I mean, how does that happen? And what else are they missing that just you're sometimes surprised that, like, wow, they've never been exposed to this?
I mean, I think it's almost like we have, as constituents and as people in the community, we need to almost do an economic field trip. Go into these neighborhoods, go into these communities and be very realistic and say, where would you go get a meal that you can sit down and have an etiquette session? They don't exist. There's one school leader, Cynthia Trevino, I think she is dynamic, and the metaphor that she uses for her kids is, how can they figure out where to go if they live in a neighborhood where there's no sidewalks? So where do you go, even within your community or beyond, to a Chicago or another metropolitan area, if what's being communicated to you indirectly is there's nowhere to walk, there's nowhere to be, So I think we have to really do a real survey of where do we live? What are their real experiences? What's really available to them as resources? And say, how would you function in this environment? In Chicago, there were some years ago about 50 schools that were closed. Could you imagine walking to school if you were a kid and there are abandoned schools on your way to school? What message does that send to you about your value or your worth or where you can go?
You know, that really reminds me, because as simple as that sounds, walk through the neighborhood. I remember in high school, we were taken into New York as kids and walked through a poor neighborhood. It's eye-opening, because it's like, I'd never been in a place like that before. And you see, wow, broken windows, empty. How do people live here? And all of a sudden you can project some level of what it must be like to be here.
Right.
But if you've never seen that, you really don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So what else are they missing, Sharice? What are some of these other things you're like, wow, they just don't even get this?
Properly communicating too. Communication is the key, and resources. If you provide resources, as you said, trying to get through neighborhoods, or if you're in an area where, you don't have anyone that could help you with whatever that issue is, but having someone to come in to say, here's some resources where we can help you with whatever it is that student needs. And that's important. Resources and communicating properly to help them as they're growing.
So you reminded me, I did an interview just recently of a high school student, and she was very soft-spoken, so it was hard to hear, so I was trying to help her with her communication. I said, so when you talk to your younger brothers, what kind of voice do you use with them? And her answer was, I scream and hit them. And I'm like, I was hoping she was going to talk loud voice, or a stronger voice. And she really didn't know what I was talking about. I mean, I think the change of having a higher level of communication for her, or powerful communication, was you yell and scream and hit. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting. If that was one of your students, what would you be doing to help them understand that there's some other possibilities here?
I mean, I think you have to role model for them and show there's different ways to deal with conflict, and it doesn't always have to include physical violence. It doesn't always have to include being loud. It's having staff and people who do direct service and work directly with the kids to be able to talk about the diversity in their experiences as well. As, hey, I may have one experience and how I'm dealing with a conflict in my home or with my peers, but when I'm in business, there's different ways to kind of dealing with it. But I think one of the things that's critically important when you're teaching and working with any group of kids anywhere, but even with this demographic, is trust. And so you have to open up the door to even understand and help them recognize why she may be communicating in that way. If you've got a mom who's working 2 or 3 jobs, has very little time to actually be home with her kids or before she has to get to the next job, there may be a lot of frustration in their home. There may be a lot of lack of hope, which puts a mom to be in a position to say, sit down, shut up, don't move, because she's got an hour or 2 hours to flip before she gets to her next job. It's opening that line of communication and that level of empathy to that child to say, I can understand why that may be occurring, but let's think about how that may not work so well in this situation or that situation.
Does that take a long time to build, or is it just they're so hungry for it they want to jump in and grab a hold of it?
I think you're building trust in relationships, and any trust in relationships, regardless if it's romantic, an adult, or a kid, requires time. And I think sometimes for kids that have been let down so frequently, and not just by the people in their homes, but again, I think let down by their communities and some of the leaders as well, it's tell me and show me that I really matter. And so sometimes it does take a lot of time to build that kind of relationship.
And it's repetitive. If that student is seeing you over a period of time, not just once or twice, and you're sharing with them, you know what, I need that information for me. So if you're continuously, you're good, you're smart, you're sharing that over and over, then that trust, you know what, she believes in me, and I thank her for believing, because they need that. They need someone who believes in them. And when you talked about being able, their voice, she's talking to you in a lower pitch, and then later, screaming and at her family. What we do is share with our students. We say, because some of them come in and we say you need to project your voice because no one can hear you. You need to be able to project. So we always tell them, here you're sitting in the front row, and let's just say if former President Obama or Jay-Z was here, you would be able to. We can hear you much louder then. So just act like they're in the room and project your voice so that we can hear. So using a little reverse psychology on them, but it's just in how, they're people. They just need to be able, you're treating them just a little bit different, being able to share with them, to have them to understand your understanding where they're coming from.
I want to make sure people also don't get this subliminal message of, this is all about girls of color and girls living in really bad neighborhoods. Can you say something to our viewers that says this is with all girls?
For us, we've been expanded. So we've worked predominantly over the last 8 years, mostly with school-age girls, elementary, middle school, and high school. But as our girls were getting older, we saw the need to be able to continue some level of structured mentoring initiatives on the college campuses. So we're in our second year of a pilot of Polished Pebbles at Duke University. And so there we've worked with undergraduate students and mentoring them with some on-campus events and e-mentoring. It's like the title of my book last year, They're All the Same Girl. So you're still dealing with girls who are dealing with the media issues, self-confidence issues, finding their voice and being able to speak up, whether it be in a job interview for a summer internship or just for having a conversation on the south side of Chicago. These are issues that any child deals with. And if there's an absence of services of a public speaking class at their university or their school, where do you expect them to pick up the skill sets?
What was the name of that book again?
The name of the book is They're All the Same Girl.
They're all the same girl. I love that. I love that.
Because they are.
Yeah.
And I just really want the viewers to understand that I think girls really experience a lot of different things that boys do.
Right.
I think it's tougher to be a girl than a boy, but just for all the things going on.
Hashtag me too.
Good. Just from both of you, maybe just a quick last thought. If you wanted one message to get out there to people about girls growing up today, what would it be?
Being able to have self-esteem, being able to find a mentor, someone that you can look up to that can say they can help you with whatever it is that you need, because they're out there, and it's colorless. It has nothing to do with the color of a person's skin. It's as Reverend Martin Luther King, the content of your character, how you're treating people, and that's all they need to know is have self-esteem, believe in yourself, and know that you can do whatever it is that you want to do in life. Just believe in yourself.
All right. Just one quick thought from you.
Together she shines. So it's not just the needs for people like Sharice and I who provide services. We need people from the civic community. We need public leadership. We need the business community to all play a role in providing support services and resources and volunteer mentors to impact girls.
Well, not only I want to thank you for being on the show, but I want to thank you for being good, strong role models for women.
Thank you.
For these girls coming up who are going to become women just like you two.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us.
It must be really tough to be a kid growing up in today's world. I grew up in a time when the world seemed simpler. Choices were fewer, information was limited, and things were easier to operate. There were only American cars. You could show up to school and find other people wearing the same jacket, pants, and shirt you had on. Medicine cabinets had aspirin, Band-Aids, and some potion to take away the pain of a sting or bite. The movie had one screen. You might have one fast food joint. Coffee was just coffee, and there was only one flavor of Coca-Cola. For information, we had 3 major TV channels and 1 or 2 local, then educational television. There was Newsweek and Time, Good Housekeeping and Reader's Digest, Look and Life. You researched what you needed to know in your encyclopedias if your family could afford a set. Pornography was a few hidden magazines, and newspapers and radios mostly carried local news. A television had 2 channel selectors, phones set on a table, and were dialed. Cars had AM radios only. Coffee was perked. The mixer had 3 speeds, and an electric skillet was a luxury. Drills had 1 speed and were plugged in. That was about it. Today, 200 to 300 channels. Download this. Ask Alexa or Siri or Google. Medicine cabinets are well stocked. You can have as many friends as you want, and they can be from anywhere. Pornography accessible with 1 million choices. Apps can give you access to anything. If your device won't do it, there are 1,000 others that will. Food, clothing, restaurants, entertainment, choices, choices, choices. The possibilities are endless and the flow of information is infinite. This is the world in which our kids are growing up. It's overwhelming. I know they are learning to navigate it, but they are like settlers discovering a new world. What can you eat that won't kill you? Where are the dangers and how bad are they? Who and what can you trust? What will it take to recover from any damage? As adults, we can help them evaluate choices and make decisions. We can identify and respond to their feelings of overload and pressure. When they do make those mistakes or are damaged, we can help them recover. You can't make it simpler, and we cannot go back to the good old days. We can be stable, caring forces in their growing lives. That will help them as they grow and become a fully developed adult. What did you think of our show today? Did you learn? Were you inspired? We would enjoy hearing your thoughts. You can reach us through our website or by email. We appreciate every time you watch Lakeshore Focus. Past shows can be accessed online after they are aired. You may use our website, YouTube, or a simple search for Lakeshore Focus. Join us next week for another show. Until then, I'm Keith Kirkpatrick saying, make a positive difference in our world today. Running a business requires smart decisions every day. Make a good decision for your company today and reach other businesses by sponsoring Lakeshore Focus. People who watch our show are an active part of the community. They care about their neighborhoods, schools, and their homes. Are these viewers your customers? Well, they should be. To learn about all the benefits of sponsoring Lakeshore Focus, give us a call at 219-756-5656. And instead of seeing my face, you can see your business.